Hello, everybody, to this week's Maintainer Reviewer Weekly. Great, everybody is here. And Paulina, you do have something to share?
Yes, an interesting example of how accidentally I found a bug in a drop-down migration. Let me show my screen. So I say accidentally because it was working fine with navigating it with a mouse. And then after selecting a first item, oh, sorry, I need to refresh. You could not find the bug anymore. So I only found it when I was checking the view with the keyboard with the screen reader. That's one thing that I do. We have access to Assistive Lab through our One Passport, so you can use an emulator. And you can choose a combination of a screen reader and a browser. And that's how I discovered that you can go into the drop-down with the keyboard, like open it, go to the first item, but you cannot move to the second item. So the first one is working fine, but then if you move with the arrow down, it just goes to the next button outside of the drop-down. And that actually looked pretty differently on my Chrome. That was just, I wasn't able to move into the drop-down at all with the keyboard. But yeah, that was only when none of this was selected. As soon as you select one item, it worked fine with the keyboard as well. So yeah, and then this was with the Jira integration. So I recently had a chat with Paul, like how much setup to do review and test locally is too much setup, and this one was quite painful with Jira. I tried with the option with Docker. I almost gave up. Then I just set up the Jira Cloud free trial and tried with that, but it took so much time now that I just I looked at the code before. It looked all good, and I just wanted to quickly go through it. And yeah, just like a little accident that I noticed that the with one arrow I can go to the drop down, but the second arrow keyboard doesn't work. So just that split second made me realize that there's something wrong. So a good example how how small small things like that can come up if you check on different browsers, for example, or with the screen reader emulator in this case.
Thanks so much for sharing. You honestly see me very impressed. I have not been aware about our tooling that we do have accessible. I'm aware that screen readers exists, but that is about it for GitLab. And regarding testing these things with a screen reader, that might be naive, but I would have hoped that our foundations team would have something on their mind, since many of these things of the components we are using are reused and shared. So I would probably not have bothered to use that, as if it'll probably be okay. Turns out it's not. So fantastic find. Thanks for sharing. Oh, I'll check this tool out.
Yeah, you're right with the foundation. They have a lot of things implemented into the components, but for some things to work, you actually need to check their documentation accessibility, how to implement the component to be accessible. So that's a bit tricky. And as for the screen readers, what I was doing for a long time, I would just use Chrome, as I do, and then turn a voiceover on MacBook. But that's, well, in the world of screen readers and browsers, that's the least popular combination and also the most buggy. So there are sets of screen readers and browsers that are the most popular, and that's what you can use with the tool, with Assistive Lab. And yeah, I was made aware that we have access to it also quite recently.
Awesome.
It's very handy because you get a small script you can run on your computer and see the GDK inside the emulator.
I don't want to put you on the spot. Like, would it be a hassle to open to give us a quick tour on this now? If you and one add-on to that is how, like, take your time. Once this thing is up, what do you actually care about? Is it basically like tabbing through the page and see if the controls are still working? Is that about it, or is there more behind?
Yes, tabbing through and just trying to do what I usually do, only with the keyboard, and at the same time listening to the sound output. But the nice thing about the Assistive Lab is that do you see the output? Yeah, great. So it also shows you the transcript of the screen reader. So if you want to share the output of the test, you don't have to record the screen reader with the sound. That's sometimes a hassle. You can just do a screenshot and see the the output of it. So you can't hear what he's saying.
Okay, so he will he will read all those things out loud. Gotcha.
Yes. Okay, wait. I'll actually open something. I'll just copy the address. Open one of the pages.
You want to turn the light down? Hey, sorry I was running late today.
No worries. While Paulina's busy with the setup, hey Paul, have you ever heard about a tool called Assistive Labs?
Of what?
Assistive Labs?
Assisted naps?
Yes, very much.
Not maps?
Labs, like laboratory or Labrador. You could
Labs. Okay, all right. My brain is clearly in one place. It's like, you got my interest. Assisted naps. I'm into this. But assisted labs. No, clearly I haven't.
Paulina, to quickly pick you up, Paulina is just giving us a tour about this tool we are having access to, and it will give you all the screen reader options, possibilities, and debug options. It's super interesting. Yeah, so that's where we currently are.
So this text, correct me if I'm wrong, but is this like what it'll say? Like, if it reads
that's what I'm hearing over you talking right now.
Oh, you're hearing it. Oh my gosh, yeah, that's gotta be wow.
And it gives you focus on the elements. So if you tap through, you will see where you are.
I see.
See the text here. Yeah, I'll stop it because it's very annoying to hear this.
Stop the torture. Stop it.
Yes, but yes, I was saying that you can run a script and actually test your local GDK, not only the websites available.
Awesome. Yes, thanks so much for sharing. That is, I made a note about it. It's super handy, and I'll definitely give it a shot. One more thing on this, if you're okay. You mentioned with the debug you found, like there was an issue between different browsers, or did I get this wrong?
Yeah, it was behaving differently in Chrome. So in Chrome, I could open the drop down, but not go through the items at all. Like arrow up and down, just move the page. And with that, that was Firefox with NVIDIA. I could open the drop down and navigate to the first item within the drop down, but not the rest of it. Until I did not select with the mouse. When I selected one item with the mouse, the whole drop down was accessible with the keyboard.
Okay, that's a bug from hell for sure. Any idea about the fix yet, or is that still working progress?
Yeah, Anna prepared the fix yesterday evening, so I'll be reviewing that today. But she found a solution.
Can we see it? Like, what was what caused it?
Let me share the screen. I haven't read through it yet. Okay. Do you see the merge request? Yeah. So there were some steps to fix it, but the issue was It was setting a non-existing item as selected. Oh, because the list, the items in the dropdown, they're coming from Jira. And if you change the key for the project, they will refresh. So sometimes they will not come to you at the time where you need them. So that was probably it, the timing. Okay, so what she did to fix it, set no initially for the ID. Watch for changes on the items within the dropdown. Each time the list changes, check if there is the selected Jira issue type ID. Doesn't exist. Check the item with the initial if it exists in the list. And then if the initial issue type existed, select it in the within the list box. And there was also a hidden input, some changes to that. Do you want to see the commit, Div?
Why not? This also it gives me a great, let's go for it. But the overview is great. Thanks for sharing. There's a lot to learn in there. That is a fantastic example.
Yes, so that was it. Starting it to know initially.
Yeah, like from how I understood the comment, it's mostly, or the biggest part seems to me, to make sure that no undefined item is never selected.
Yes.
Initially, that is like the biggest,
yes,
the biggest pitfall, I suppose.
Yeah, and then
just to make sure this is not a bug on the list box on GitLab UI, but this is actually on this specific usage. Oh,
yes, that's settings for Jira integration.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess the root cause probably boils down that the data we're getting from the Jira API, I suppose it isn't as clean and slick as we would wish for. Therefore, this is probably important.
Takes time also. Yeah.
That's the plus side of working on integrations, is there's always someone to point the finger to, of like, it's that other service.
Why even fix it? Just open an issue in Java.
Paulina, do you think that there's a fix that could have happened at the GitLab UI component level that could have, I don't know, made the interaction here a bit more robust and kind of work out of so that future developers don't run into this pitfall and we have to fix it specifically for this? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think if we take out Jira and that the data needs to come down, the problem was really the data for the component. It should start with no, and then everything should be fine. Yeah, because there's assumption that this might be present. I think that what caused the problem, because if you set up the integration once, that data will be available probably, but if not, it's the first time, the timing of the request is not what you wish for. Yeah,
I see.
Yeah,
I see.
because I never like I reviewed a couple of drop-down migrations. I never had an issue of not being able to go into the drop-down of the keyboard. That's why I also discovered it like by accident almost.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was just thinking, I almost wonder, like, is it the responsibility of the drop-down to admit when my list of possible inputs has changed, or when the input has changed? Do I need to admit, like, no, you got to be one of these? Like, maybe it's the responsibility of drop down to assert that we're not ever giving it a value that's not one of its options. And it could do that by like admitting back like a value has changed. And I've seen that, but I don't know if I honestly don't know how I feel about doing that at the component level. But that's a good rule of thumb to take away, of like, the initial data being null, especially because I guess there's an async nature here. That makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yeah. We usually set up dropdowns for options that are known. Probably.
Yeah. Cool.
Before we move on, can we quickly go to the test coverage of this and see? Like, it is probably just checking if in this commit, I suppose the author updated the test as well, isn't it? Like on the left in the sidebar. Yeah, there we go. Sets the correct initial value to a hidden. Okay, just checking if the initial value that wasn't taken care of in the first place. Cool. Interesting. Awesome. Sweet, thanks for sharing. Fantastic catch. Really, really cool stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Something related with Listbox. Have you tried to use it with values of the, you know, that there is like a text and a value, and the value right now I think you can be a string, but I have tried to feed an object to it, and it didn't work very well because I wanted to put more information than just a string. Have you noticed that?
I haven't noticed that, and I would have expected object to work. Except that now I'm wondering, will Vue try to make it like all reactive, the object you pass to it? That's a good question. I would expect object to work.
Yeah. What I end up doing is to stringify an object. And then when on the select, parse the object, and that was just a shortcut of that specific. But I think it should really work with any object, because it's very likely that you want to put more data than just a string.
Oh yeah,
I will take a look. It's just something that just happened to me recently with list boxes and
I imagine, like, yeah, that's a really interesting question. I imagine it might be the option tag that it expects like a value. I imagine that's why it's expecting some sort of string to thing. But I would think that the component could probably, you know, work around that and not carry that restriction implicitly over to the consumer of the component. So I like what you're saying, makes a lot of sense, and I would expect to work. That sounds like a GitLab UI bug, something for the foundations team. Yeah, we got to get on those drop downs. I'm joking.
Pointing fingers again.
That's the other good thing when you have separate teams. Like, man, yeah. Clearly, there's one approach I take with any project I'm working on is, are there other people working on it? Good. Okay. All right. So this means I'm safe no matter what happens, because as long as I can beat them to the finger pointing. I had a couple of things I was going to share, but I'm going to pause in case anyone wants to. I was late. I feel like I need to be penalized.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So this was a MR that I created, and the reviewer mentioned it was Peter Herman, that nowadays on the test files you don't need to international the string. And I think he pointed to something from Paul, right? And I wanted to ask for more clarifications, but because I don't know how this works, especially with namespaces. When a string is international, you can put a namespace to give more context onto what the string means, right? And I don't know, if you don't specify the name string, I don't know how it works, how it finds the right
Yeah, that's a good question. So we used to, the context is, okay, for the longest time, we didn't do this. And then all of a sudden it was recommended that we did translate strings in test files. So it's like, I'm going to assert that the button text says this. We would have the translation wrapping in the production view component, but then we would also do the translation again or reference the IATN translation constant or whatever in the test. And the reason why was because Jihu, which is we support them pretty strongly, and they were running into issues because their whole setup is their default locale is non-English. So when we hard coded an English string, somehow based on their setup, which is, extending and modifying a number of our environment, their whole setup was everything's being translated into the non-English language. So a whole bunch of tests were failing on their end when they made that change. And I guess, I don't know what they were working on or how they worked around it, but their request to us was like, can we wrap these in translations? But you're asking about like namespace strings, and
Yes.
So what I had done was, in the unit test environment, we shouldn't be actually translating anything. Like, I would expect this to be deterministic of no matter what machine is running the thing, the output is always going to be the same. And so what we do is we mock out GED, which is the library we use for translating. We mock it out so that we have no other locales we could possibly translate to. We're just always going to translate it based on how you received it. So the namespaced stuff still runs, like, so it'll strip out the namespace bit, but it's just not going to find a translation match. And so it's just going to use whatever you've put in there as when it prints it out. So all of those like translation utilities, like the namespace one and sprintf and those kind of things, they all run. It's just, we've mocked it out in the unit test environment that there's no locales are going to be found. So we're not actually going to replace it with a translation, but all of the utility stuff still runs.
So it means that it's basically testing in English.
Yes, it's testing. The environment is that we're not finding any locales.
Basically,
the feature tests do run like the whole gambit. So that's kind of the thing, is like, this isn't something we should be worried about in unit test land, but in like the feature and end-to-end test is where we'll assert that things are integrated more clearly.
Okay, I think now I understand better. Thank you for the context. So yeah, this is the unit test for the front end, but then for other unit testing in Rails or in features, we need still to specify.
Yeah, the goal would be in Rails to do the similar thing,
to do the same thing, right?
Yeah. Because here's the situation is, sometimes I want to assert that the sprintf works, and especially like if I'm like interlocking other, a link inside of there which has other translations and stuff, I don't want to recall that sprintf in my test. So I actually have to provide a string in the test that isn't going to be that is going to be the whole sentence that I expect. But if I do that, and even if I wrapped in a translation stuff, there's going to be no translations for that sprintf string. so the previous setup would run into those issues, and that was kind of a flag that like we're not this isn't as consistently useful of a solution as we think it is. And so thankfully it worked out for both Jihoon and our team to let's not worry about translations and unit tests. So that way we can just throw hard-coded test assertions, and that can simplify and strengthen our tests.
I think it makes sense.
Yeah, thanks for asking that question.
But yes, I guess what it makes sense is for the feature test end to end. Well, yeah, it makes sense there to you. Okay.
Yeah, I think I do think that's a good point to highlight as well. Yeah, cool. Yeah, that's a good question.
I think Paul, it's your turn.
Yeah, I had a couple of things. I have one from a while ago. So I'm really pleased to see you all here, even though I was late. You can tell it's eaten me up. But you see, the last meeting we had was a long time ago. No one's been showing up. Yannick's been out, and I think Yannick brings the party. So I'm glad you're here. But this was going to be the test meeting for me. It's like if no one showed up, I'm canceling this thing. But I guess not. So.
I was actually there last week, but I was there on my own, so it's not necessarily.
I was there.
Which time did you join, though? Yeah, we probably missed each other, but never mind.
Yeah, maybe. Anyways, so this was a really good MR from Deepika, who's working on moving things to page bundles. And these are very difficult MRs to review because the changes themselves are straightforward, but what it touches is so much. And so you have to verify all of these CSS classes. When we have moved this to a page bundle, are we referencing these classes in pages that are not including this bundle? And so sure enough, there was one that in an admin page dealing with webhooks is referencing label list item, even though it has nothing to do with labels. I guess it just had the rules it needed, and so it was using it. And so moving it to a page bundle, I noticed a very, very small change. Like a change that a user probably wouldn't notice. And it was like a small border color change. It's like, okay, we're technically changing something. And it's like, okay, the ideal is for this, but it's like, I really don't know. Like, I don't know what to do to make this call of like, do we want to block the MR here to fix this thing? Do we want to fix this thing here? And like, and so my main takeaway was I'm going to defer to the author. I'm just going to raise the issue, but I'm going to let the author pick how do we want to handle this. And that was helpful. It was like, she was like, okay, let's just move this little bit over to common since it is referenced. I was like, that's great. And then I went ahead and opened a small MR to get it out of there because I guess I had some time 1 month ago. But yeah, I just wanted to encourage when doing code review, you find something and sometimes it's one of the most time consuming or difficult things is, do I block the MR because of this? Is this something we want to move forward? And I would highly recommend always bring up things you find. And sometimes just asking the author, what do you want to do with this is totally fine. And some authors want to patch it all up and some authors be like, we'll handle that and follow up. And it's like, okay, but it's maybe not always your responsibility to make all of the decisions. So that was it. I don't know.
Good. Thank you for sharing.
The other thing that I ran across, I'm sure we've all come across these MRs, but this is let me see if I can go back to the original version. Yeah, okay. And come across this MR, and it's like, oh man, it looks so straightforward. We have deprecated clipboard button, and now we're changing it to clipboard button. So this is a pajamas migration, I guess. And automatically my first thoughts are like, wait, if we could have just done this the whole time, why didn't we do it? Like, that's so a little thing is this, I'm surprised, I think, when I see MRs that just look like, oh yeah, we can just not use the deprecated version. That's great. I'm surprised about that. And I like, then part of me is like wanting to prove myself wrong of like, and so as
what did you discover?
Yeah, I know. So all these like pajama migration stuff, they're difficult because it's like the for one, it's this, and Paulina, this falls in line with the accessibility stuff you're talking about. Is like, man, the number of contexts that just affect anything with the front end is so big. But then with GitLab is like, even just like, we have a sidebar. We have so many different sidebars, and sidebars can be collapsed. Like the dimensions of the things just increase. And so these things, they do have to be QA'd. And I know that the author QA'd it, but it's like when I'm as a reviewer, I'm kind of, I guess, maybe seeing a lot of these MRs. I don't know, maybe I've run into a lot of the issues before. So I have this as just in the back of my head of things to kind of check for. But there's a very small thing, but I know it would have been annoying to users, but you see that the button didn't take up the whole collapsed icon thing. But it's inside of it. You see?
Yep.
And
annoying.
It's tough. So I didn't have, normally when I do this, I want to find a fix for it, but I didn't have time to do that. But Cynthia did a great job finding a really good fix for it. And I tested out. I was like, I can't find anything wrong with this. This is great. So, and not like I want there to be something wrong with it. This wrapping div, she moved the classes into the button and it worked out pretty nicely. So,
good for Artie.
So that was a good story. But I just wanted to encourage, anytime looking at pajama migration stuff, sometimes the MRs look really straightforward, but the lingering question for me is like, well, why wasn't it like this before? And sometimes there's a reason why it wasn't done before. And yeah, that's it. All right.
Well,
so we're at
Artie started to do a migration, pajama migration with some buttons that were for the login, and is there are some an issue that has been tried by different people and always have been reverted, because they look very simple, but there are other things that are, and so I mentioned to her, okay, if you want to do that, go ahead, but there has been this and this and this issue. Oh, okay. Maybe I should move to another thing.
I know, yeah, that's tough. I feel for that when I see like community contributors pick it up an issue, and I'm like, oh man, I want to warn you, but I also want to encourage you to contribute. I see Yannick's face. Yannick's like, what's wrong with the login page? Login page is great.
That is 100% what I just thought about. Yes.
Yeah, maybe this is I don't know.
That's not related with the Yannick's changes on the new redesign of the page. But that is still lingering. There are some issues still lingering from the redesign that I am trying to work on, iron, and then to remove and set up the default redesign feature flag. And because right now we have so many if statements about, hey, if they're redesigned to this, if not, do that, and it's really difficult to make changes.
Yeah, it would be. I feel like the login page is a really good candidate for us to introduce visual regression testing, because I feel like it's one of the pages that is high value and super important, but also doesn't have a lot of different contexts as compared to the other, even though there is a good amount of case conditions I know in it. But I can't wait till hopefully one day we can start up a working group and get some focused time to actually implement visual regression for pages like that. And I think that'll go a really long way for helping us make changes confidently.
Help me. I know little about visual regression tests, like just as an example, how could something like that look? What would we ask? What problem would we be trying to solve?
I think you're familiar with it with the GitLab UI project, and we have like their storybook screenshots. And
okay, yes.
I think it's possible that we could do something in Capybara, but it's possible we may need to use a totally separate,
okay, yeah,
stack doing this.
Okay, gotcha. I wasn't aware of the term, but yeah, I highly do agree. As if in like I feel that the styles in our code base are pretty Wild West. As if in like we are testing everything, but when you can screw up with CSS massively. And you would get away with a lot of things in the current state of it. So
I like that phrasing. It sounds like, there's
as if
like
I tried.
Yeah, it's like there's some criminals like, man, you gotta check out this project.
Talking about login page and regression, recently a user has mentioned, well, my mermaid graphs used to work well and display well in the login page, but then suddenly have stopped working. So, yes, it happens that the function that renders the mermaid along with other features was generally available across all GitLab. It was run at some point on the loading page, I guess, or at the end of the load. But it was now, it was taken, so only to the pages where there were such features, and they missed the login page because they thought, well, who wanted to create a plot in the login page? But hey, there it is. People are using all the markup features available. So
I'm sorry to be that guy, but was that a documented feature that users could render a mermaid graph on the login page?
Well, you can render whatever is in the markup in the GitLab supported markup. So you at this point you don't know exactly what people are introducing in the login page, which was one of the pages where this type of text are available.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Some point, maybe next time, like I want to encourage across anytime we run into something and we've missed a thing, it's like, because all of our whole code base is dynamically typed. So it's really hard to find and for Rails, oh my gosh, it's really hard to find references to how a thing is used. Anytime we miss a usage of a thing, I'm wondering, like, what happened that like a regex search for this function or for this class like didn't catch this, and is our whole team like, are we doing project-wide regexing for references to things that we touch. And is that even possible in Rails? But I know with the mermaid stuff, it's really tough because it's like, yeah, we use the render markdown everywhere. And so I know it's then like some layers removed, like you can change like the various different filters that are all stacked up that may render certain flavors of markdown or mermaid or whatnot. But yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, man. And that's the other thing too. You mentioned visual regression is testing. You'd have to have the foresight to put a mermaid graph in your visual regression test for that to actually catch. That's really funny. Thankfully, though, we have a loving community that leaves issues when we break things, because that's what people do when they love each other, is they leave issues when you've disappointed them.
Yeah, exactly. That's what people do. Very, very last thought on the visual regression test is, yeah, I'm with you, and there'll probably always be some edge cases that we're not gonna be testing, but I would feel like maybe as a first iteration or something, a very, very, very basic setup, something like what GDK does when it comes out of the box. Nothing regarding data and stuff, nothing more like that would probably go already quite a long way. So
Yeah.
that might be more of a manageable task than checking for every eventuality.
100%. And the argument that against the value of it, because you can't anticipate all of the edge cases, doesn't directly address is like, this is still a very profitable step, even though, yeah, it's not the end all solution for all issues, but it's a very profitable step that we can. And I think everybody wants to do it. We just haven't had time to prioritize it. So if anyone ever ends up with time on their hands to,
I was just about to ask this exact question, like, is there some historical context why we don't have it, or is it only we just didn't do it yet?
I think it's only time.
Gotcha.
I think.
Okay, cool.
So yeah.
Anybody looking for a side project? That might be something.
I know, it totally, yeah, it needs to happen. Well, we don't have anything left on the agenda. We have a handful of minutes left, but maybe let's end early so we can get some time back. Does that sound good to everybody? All right, thanks for hopping on. You saved the meeting. You don't realize it, but you did.
Awesome.
Take care. Bye.
Good fun.
Okay, later.
Catch you soon, everybody.
Thanks, Eduardo. Thanks, Paulina. Thanks, Jan.